All right, folks, welcome back to this week's episode of Firepunk Fridays. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. For those of you that would rather listen to it in podcast form, it is available on Spotify and other streaming services. So, got a good one this week. Last night I had a conversation with Charles Poosch. Had a really good long conversation. We went off on our normal rabbit trails that I seem to always run into, but really good conversation with Charles. He's come on board with ODSS doing announcing duties the last couple of years, and really enjoyed having him. And just talked about a number of different topics. Kind of the reason that I reached out to Charles was last week he made a post on our forum in regards to asking the question why people seem to abandon so many builds before they're done, or maybe some of them even have gotten finished, but guys lose interest before they really bring them to their full potential. And it generated a lot of good discussion. So we talked about that a good bit, and then just really a little bit of anything and everything. But before we get into Charles, I figured show you guys this and talk about this a little bit. So those of you that saw our promo video yesterday or earlier this week, this is our new Q loop. This is designed to go on the transmission cross member and to keep the back end of your front drive shaft contained. Kind of the reason this came about was because of seeing a lot of trucks getting tore up when the U-joint in the front drive shaft fails. We see a lot of trucks getting wiring harnesses and fuel lines and all kinds of stuff wrapped up in that shaft. So kind of with that, I'll go into a little bit of a spiel about how important it is to pay attention to that front drive shaft, to keep it greased, and really it's not a bad idea. We would highly recommend every 75 to 100,000 miles, just replace that front drive shaft. It's not worth it. We've seen, the first thing that goes is it breaks your transfer case in half, and then it can break your transmission. And if the drive shaft gets loose, then it gets into fuel lines and wiring harnesses. We've seen trucks totaled, we've seen truck fires, we've seen all kinds of different stuff. So this is there for insurance. It is there to help minimize the damage if that does happen. Still not recommended that you just ignore your front drive shaft. So this, along with good front drive shaft maintenance, hopefully we'll have some trucks that can stay on the road for a lot longer and not get torn up. So hope you all enjoy our conversation with Charles, and we'll catch you guys next week. All right, folks, tonight we are joined by Charles Pusch. What's going on, Charles?
It's another night and towards the end of what's been a pretty long season.
Yeah, you definitely seem to burn the candle at both ends during what for you is polling and racing season. Yeah, tell people a little bit what you do and about your motorsports journey. I
didn't grow up in a family that had any connection to this directly at all. And I wasn't a farm kid, grew up in town. My dad was a scientist, but I went to the county fair when I was real young, really got, pardon the pun, hooked on tractor pulling. For whatever reason, it resonated with me, but just was a big motorsports fan as a kid. And after school, moved back home here, and there was a group starting that same summer that was going to be, antiques and farm stocks, just a local club. And I was like, well, great. This is a chance to get my feet wet and do something. And they were small. They weren't going to pay for an announcer. It's just a club thing. There was no prize money. Guys were just doing it for the fun of it and trophies. And because everybody who became a member of the club would have some sort of responsibility for putting the event on, the first show we did, at one point, the guy who was announcing, it was his turn to go pull, and said, anybody want to come announce? I'm like, yeah, give me the mic. I'll try.
Yeah.
And now 22 years later, here I am still doing it. And wow. It was an accident. I figured growing up, I was always going to be the one putting the helmet on, and and started on that path. But by the time my second child was born. I just, man, I'm already short of time as it is. And, being a 20 something with a mortgage and 2 kids and soon to be a third, it was like, this isn't going to happen right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really kind of shifted my focus onto the announcing bit of it. And it was starting to become something. And I don't have any regrets about that. I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that's really cool about that. And I mean, granted, there's a lot of work and a lot of long days behind the mic and stuff, but it's a tool that, I mean, it's your job, but yet it gets you around to a lot of different events, and you get to experience a lot of cool different stuff and really get to know a lot of people. I'm assuming for you being an announcer, it's a lot the same for us going racing from the standpoint of if it wasn't for the people you got to know and just the friends that you made, it probably wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right on that. And I suppose it doesn't seem odd to me, and it wouldn't seem odd to us, but it probably is to a lot of people outside of our world, that I live in the house I grew up in. I live in the town I grew up in. I don't talk to 3 people here. My closest friends and the people I talk to every single day are spread across the entire country. And I'm closer to people that live in Iowa than I am to anyone in my hometown. But that's just how it's evolved.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely crazy how, I mean, yeah, people like that become your family, and it's just when you have common interests, it's easy to become friends with people and get to know a lot of good folks. So tractor pulling is where you got started, and it's still, I would say, looking at, from the outside in, tractor pulling is probably your passion. Would I be correct in saying that?
It is, but I'll freely admit, like, I'm just ADD enough that, like, if they're putting an engine in it and they're trying to compete with it, I'll be around it. I want to know more.
Yeah. So, how did the ODSS thing come about? Is there other things that you venture outside of sled pulling? Yeah.
I've tried the circuit racing thing, and it's such a different style for doing this particular job. I find drag racing and pulling, in terms of my approach to it, they're 2 totally different disciplines, but the way I have to work through it is very similar. So it was very natural to go to the drag strip for me. I'm comfortable there and I enjoy it. And I'd like to do some more drag racing besides. The circuit racing is a totally different style. It is like nonstop motor mouth. And I don't know, I'm not like that. I'm not wired that way. I kind of want to have that ability to take a breath and observe what's happening and be able to comment on it. I don't know how to do that in real time, process what I'm seeing, and still keep talking.
Oh, I get it. I mean, sometimes things happen so fast, it's just hard to keep up. I've dabbled in it a little bit here and there. We had our dirt drags back in the day where I got stuck behind the mic, for 12 hours a day, and a lot of the stuff kind of, comes naturally, but it is tough to keep the crowd engaged and to know what information the crowd might want and how to make it better. And it gets long. And it's a lot the same as this from the standpoint of, I mean, the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And the more you have to think, and the more you, if you're new to it and you're a little bit nervous, it definitely makes it not near as easy as it appears at times.
Yeah. So, and to answer your question about ODSS, that it really started with Ultimate Callout Challenge. When that first came out, we knew it was going to be in Utah, and my then co-announcer, my late business partner, Andrew, and we were all about it, but the travel just wasn't going to work. We weren't going to get out there for that first year. Well, when we heard that it was going to move to Indy for year 2, we had a friend out in Idaho who knew James and Chris really well. And we approached Kenny and said, hey, could you get us an introduction to them and see if we could get the gig at Indy? Never figuring we actually were gonna. And when they said yes, like, okay, awesome. And so the first real sort of side-by-side drag racing thing I got to do was there when they did that Quick 8 shootout. I think it would have been 2019.
Okay.
I think that's the year it was. And then COVID happened. And Adam Blattenberg was going to do his closest to the pin driving contest, we had to call it, at Wackler's track, the COVID drags.
Yep.
And he got a hold of me and said, would you be interested in coming down for this? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I, jumped all over it. And that really wound up being, in a sense, an audition for ODSS and doing it in front of you guys and in front of Greg. And
Right.
I must not have sucked too bad, because not only did they bring me back for the second one, Michael Dalton called me for Crossville that summer. And, when the season ended, Greg got a hold of me and said, hey, we like you. Are you interested in doing the whole circuit? And I said, well, send me the schedule. I just want to make sure there's no conflicts. But I mean, yeah, absolutely. And so here we are.
Sweet. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you, and it's funny how things kind of fall into place at times. But you mentioned Andrew a little bit. Talk to me a little bit. I know you guys were really close, and I'm sure that was a transition. But I guess kind of where I'm going with that is, for me, a two-man booth is way easier from the standpoint of you always have, you can bounce back and forth. One person can really hone in on the details, and the other person can kind of be a color commentator. Do you find a one-man booth to be fairly natural, or was that a pretty big adjustment for you?
No, I had been doing it for, I want to say 12 or 13 years alone in this area. I hadn't really made it to an event of the caliber that would require the attention of two. And so I was used to doing that, but I also knew and could tell that I was getting stale. I needed something to kind of not make it so rote when I came and did a show. And Andrew and I had become pretty good friends, and I knew he had a photographic memory, for one. I mean, if he met you one time, he remembered you forever. And he knew the sport really, really well. And one night I just looked at him and said, do you want to try this? Do you want to do this with me? Because I felt like that would be that spark that would get me out of the rut that I felt I was in at the time. And it just worked. We meshed well. He was the cut up, I was the straight man. I'd be the facts and figures, he'd be the analysis, and it just flowed back and forth to a point where I could be upstairs in the booth, say, and he'd be down trackside, and we wouldn't even have to look at each other to pass the talking back and forth. We just had a flow where we didn't even need the nonverbal piece anymore. It just worked. And after he passed, I spent a year or two working alone, mainly because I was mad about it, for one. But I also then struggled because the rapport we had was so good. I struggled to find that replacement where it worked. And in the last year or two, now I've found a couple guys where we do have that. And I wish we could work together a little bit more to develop that even further than we have. But I'm comfortable either way. But yeah, the two man, especially if you're conversational with each other, it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think drag racing and sled pulling has the same tendencies. There's enough in between action times that keeping the crowd engaged throughout a long day, whether it's sled pulling or drag racing, can definitely be tedious at times, just to know how to fill. And you're not going to fill all of it, but anytime you can have conversation and go back and forth, that's always a helpful thing. So how much would you say there's a lot of homework going into each race? Do you try to talk to racers?
Yeah, there definitely is. People see you at the track, and for this job, you're one of the first in and one of the last to leave, but they don't see during the week that 3 hours a night you're on the internet or on Facebook or you're on Messenger or you're on the phone talking to people, gathering those backstories and kind of finding out where everybody is. Social media can be, I'll say, it can be awful at times, but for this job, it's a wonderful resource. It's a good tool because guys are there. It's a passion project, right? They're on there. They're talking about it. They're sharing what they're up to. And hey, we're getting ready for this race, and we got this going on with it. And so, there's a lot of that goes on. I have trained myself over the years where I really don't work from any notes. I'll have my live reads for the advertising, and I'll have the points in front of me, but that's it. Everything else, it's been loaded into my head for the last week and a half already when I get there.
Yeah, that definitely makes a difference when you don't have to be looking up notes and, you can think on your feet
Yeah.
and be
And it's
fluid with
it's
stuff. So,
important too it's important when you're a one-man show up there, because you don't have that downtime where you can go flip pages and
right.
go, hey, what was this? It just needs to be there and ready
Yeah.
to be said.
Right.
And I just trained myself to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned a little bit something about Adams, closest to the pin race at the Wagler thing. I actually, when you said that, every once in a while when I'm scrolling back through old pictures, I had sent Jeremy a picture of, I think I took a nitrous bottle bracket and had set it on the back of the S10 and had put my golf bag on it and said,
Yes,
we're
I've
ready.
seen that picture. I remember that.
We were fully ready to go golfing if that's what we had to do. For those of you that aren't familiar with the situation, this would have been, right post lockdown of COVID, and we were desperate to go racing, and we had the go ahead, and then I think kind of last minute somebody kind of threatened to backtrack on their word as far as like county health officials or something like that.
Yeah.
And Jeremy's whole argument was the local golf course is open for business and you're not shutting them down. So we'll go golfing if we have to go golfing. We may, hit a golf ball down the track before we go racing or something, but
World's fastest golf carts,
right.
There's something else about that show too and I did a couple others that summer under similar circumstances that was a real adjustment for me. Is I'm used to crowd reaction when something
Yeah.
happens on the track or something I say. Well, for that first one there, I didn't even hold a microphone that was tied in the track PA. There was nothing.
Oh,
I was
wow.
talking into a microphone down trackside next to Amy Gilbert, and we were live streaming it.
Yeah.
And it
was
was
weird.
really
Yeah.
awkward.
Well, that whole weekend was just really weird because I mean, no spectators, and
Yeah.
they even, limited, or as much as they could, limited how many people you brought with you. So, I mean, it was just the racers. It was a very different feel, but we were all just glad to be out racing, and it was definitely good to get out. But another race that we went to in that same time, it was maybe, I don't know, within a month of that, there was a big race down in Cincinnati at Edgewater where they had brought in some of the street outlaws, and they pretty much said, I don't care what the regulation is. We're going racing and we're all going to have fun. And we know there's a lot of people that want to do this. And I don't remember, it was a handful of street outlaw guys. And then they had a big pro mod shootout. We took the S10 down, and I think we had, if I remember right, we had Josh's pro street truck there as well. And we show up there, and I pretty sure there was close to 10,000 people there that evening, and not a person cared about COVID. And it was the greatest breath of fresh air that we had in a long time. I mean, people were just glad to be out and have a glimpse of normal. So that was really pretty cool.
Definitely had some of those that summer as well. One that definitely sticks out, I went out to Rockwell, Iowa to do the North Iowa Nationals with the National Tractor Pulling Association. And it wound up being the only Grand National event they got off the whole summer. Everything else got canceled. There was nowhere else they could go and do it. And the place was wall to wall. And for 3 days, we felt normal. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yep. No, there's definitely, we are built to socialize and not be, penned up in our houses by ourselves. There's still things I look back at that summer that I think I learned. Well, sometimes I wonder if I learned, but I know at least made me aware how much we don't slow down and enjoy, what we have going on. Like, sometimes we feel like we always have to be doing something. Like, it's just not good to just be at home. And, I got some projects done that summer that I wouldn't have otherwise, and spent more time at the house with the kids. And, so it's definitely a good reflection to a little bit of a check on how hard we go sometimes, and the things that we give up sometimes to chase the dream that is racing or pulling. So
I definitely can echo that. As much as I love doing this, I'm very much looking forward to the weekend after Rudy's. That'll be the first weekend I didn't leave the house to go to an event somewhere since the second week of July.
Wow.
And I'm tired of it. I need a break.
Yeah, I hear you there. It's yeah. This summer's been a little bit nice for us with not having the S10 all summer. It definitely has lightened things up a little bit, and the ODSS schedule being a little bit lighter helped as well. I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings about it. Like, I mean, the amount of races that we're going to end up with this year is a little bit light, but I also think there really is something to, you go too hard, makes it hard to run a business sometimes. And I also think that it opens it up for guys to have time to, whether it's go to their local races or maybe, hit up an NPK race or something. Like, I believe Ben Shaddy and Austin Doige are planning to go to NPK Norwalk this weekend. So
yeah,
some of that kind of stuff I think is good, but
I agree.
Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed initially when the schedule came out. I was like, man, only 5. That's,
Mhm.
I was hoping for like 7. That's what I wanted to see. But Ryan Milliken made the comment, and I've kind of come around to it. I kind of think maybe he's onto something here. Let's have 5, and let's have it be like it was years ago when those 5 events were like Super Bowls. Like everyone would come because it was so limited. And I've sort of come around to that.
Yeah. What's your take on like independent events? Like, I guess I kind of have my opinion on it. Like, do you think that's good for the industry? Like, I don't know. I kind of go along with the Super Bowl theory. Like, when there's too many, it kind of waters things down. But then I also kind of understand, people wanting to get involved and be able to host local events and some of that kind of stuff. But what do you see in the diesel racing, especially? Like, do you think we're doing the industry a favor by having some of those other smaller events, or not really?
No, I think the other smaller regional type events definitely have their place. You've got guys who are passionate about this, but let's say maybe they live in Illinois and they simply can't drive to North Carolina next weekend. It's just not going to happen. But there might be a comparable event in terms of what's offered for them to participate that is close to home, so that they can still be a part of it, and get their fix, get their passion exercised. There's always going to be a place for that. What I wouldn't want to see is for something like ODSS to go away. I want that standardization of a class structure, of a rule book for those classes, of safety, by all means for safety. We learned that this year big time, right?
Yeah.
I think there needs to be that for that reason.
Let's talk about the safety thing a little bit. Definitely been a really tough year for us. I mean, the last 2 races, I've never experienced anything like it, with Tom's accident in Crossville, and then following it up at Scheid, we had our share of hold your breath moments there as well. And we do this knowing the risks, and yet you never want to see them happen. And I mean, thankfully, up until this year, I had never seen it happen. I don't hope to ever see it happen again. But it does really help us all to just take a step back. We spend lots of money on making things go fast. I think we need to spend more time and attention, and not be scared to spend money to make things as safe as we can. Obviously, there's always going to be the unforeseen circumstance that we can't prevent, but I don't know. I don't really know what more to say to that, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think there's been a lot of good, and this, good, respectful back and forth conversation within the industry and amongst the racers themselves. They recognize that we did hit a tipping point, and some attention needs to get paid to it. I think there's some things being planned for PRI time, to address some of those concerns and do some education on it. And I think that's a very, very positive thing, because I haven't admitted this to too many people, but at at the Shide race, when the pro classes came out on the track to run, I spent those classes scared because I didn't know what was going to happen next. You know, I watched Johnny fly off into the trap, and you know, a couple other guys. Ben had a wild one where he kept it out of the kitty litter but got close. Steve Royalty spinning it out into the dirt down there twice. It's just like,
right.
I've been around the sport a long time. You know, in the back of your mind that accidents can happen and things can happen, but it got to be a rash. It was bad, and I don't like feeling that way. I should be enjoying it and not worried if my friend's going to come back from this run or not. And so it is a big thing, and I like seeing the attention paid and how serious guys are taking it.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely makes you think about things a lot harder and makes you pay attention to those things. I mean, when we make hundreds and hundreds of passes and nothing goes wrong, it's easy to kind of be lax and not pay attention to some of that stuff. And, you know, it definitely makes us pay more attention to things on the fab side of stuff. You know, we've kind of rethought some of our policies as far as, you know, what we want to offer and what not, you know, as far as liability on a shop and some stuff like that. You never want to be the person that's liable for something like that. And yet we know that we're all human and there's some things that are out of our control. So, I mean, my day job, I sell insurance. So, I mean, my brain just goes there all the time, every day. I take it serious and I do take it serious because, again, it goes back to the passion piece of it. We're all in this together and love what we're doing and form some really strong, lasting friendships. I want that to continue because you made it through your next pass. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't ever wish to go through an incident like Tom's again, but I did really appreciate how all the racers pulled together and just how everybody at the track that weekend, you know, really there was a lot of, I don't know, soul searching maybe, or just a lot of close bonding, which was good. And then the tribute at Shide, I thought that was handled really well. I appreciate, you know, the words that you shared. And I know for me, emotionally, that wouldn't be very easy to do. And I know it was something for you to.
And I told you, and I appreciate your edit on that video too, because my hands were shaking so hard trying to get that out.
Yeah. But no, you did good. And, you know, I think, I'm afraid I'm going to butcher it, but as far as Tom goes, you know, you said he was a guy with a 2-car garage and a handful of vacation days and didn't know how to say no or something like that. And
that's it. And in his essence, that was Tom. Yeah.
So it's really cool to see the impact that Tom had on everybody. And, you know, we're definitely missing a piece without him. And,
we are, but I love that he recorded so much of what he did, because anytime you need a reminder about what it's about and what he was trying to teach all of us, we can go back and look at it anytime we want. Our buddy's still there, telling us, teaching us those same lessons, and he'll teach them to people forever. And that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tom's passion in the garage and, you know, what he didn't say no to kind of leads me into the reason that I reached out to you in the first place. Last week, well, shucks, of course, now I lost it. I had it all pulled up on Facebook and I was going to go through the thread and all that good stuff. But last week on our forum, you made a post. Maybe I don't have it in front of me. You could probably tell people a little bit better what the question was.
Yeah, it was prompted by something earlier in the day. I'd seen a vehicle, and I won't say who. I saw somebody's race truck come up for sale, and it isn't the first time, and I know it won't be the last time, but I get that when I see something like that, at first I'm kind of sad, especially because it was a good truck. I liked seeing it run, but I started marinating on that, and by the evening I was just like, man, I got to ask our industry, what is it that motivates somebody to get away from a truck that maybe hasn't reached its potential or hasn't been completed? Is it time? Is it money? Is it a lack of passion? did another business opportunity come up for you that you felt compelled to follow? Is it family? There were, and I framed it in such a way that there was no wrong answer, and I wasn't attacking anybody, and I'm not. I just wanted to get a better understanding of where people who are doing this are in their own heads. What's the thought process for you? And for the most part, it thankfully did not devolve into just a bitch session. I was really happy about that. And some of the answers were a little tough to read. It wasn't what you want to hear, but it was honest, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, no, I definitely, it created a lot of good conversation. And, we talk about it quite a bit. Like, if you are on Facebook long enough, you realize how many incomplete projects are out there. And some of them will probably never see the light of day. And it's sad. So I don't know. It is tough to know. I think sometimes, I don't know specifically what truck you were talking about, but you talked a little bit about, trucks that have been running but feel like they haven't reached their full potential, and somebody, decides to move on from it. I feel like sometimes we can almost be our own worst enemies from the standpoint of, we want to go fast beyond our means so bad that sometimes we put ourselves in a position where we can't even enjoy what we could afford, if that makes sense. And I feel like a lot of people fall into that category of, I don't want to index race. Like, index racing is boring.
Right.
And I get it. I mean, we all have the need for speed. And when you have the need for speed, it's hard to know when to stop sometimes.
I think people probably need to hear this, because they don't realize they have that thought that, I want the pro street truck. I want to go 150 miles an hour. Well, then you go talk to some of the guys who have those, and they're all sitting on the back of their trailer, and they've just changed their transmission for the third time of the weekend. And they're just sitting there just looking over at Ryan Riddle like, that's pretty cool, man. He doesn't even touch it.
No, I have lived that very thing, and I've probably told this story on here before, but I'm going to guess somewhere 2018, 2019, the year that we were racing the S10 and the Pro Street truck. Denny, you're crazy, by the way, if you're trying to do that next year. We were at Scheid, and we were trying the trans brake valve body that we were dead determined to make work. And we had pulled the transmission, I don't know, 3-4 times. It was Saturday night. We were racing Sunday yet back at that time. And we were pulling the trans yet again. And I just remember walking by Josh Scruggs' pits, and he's sitting there with his dad and a couple of his buddies in their lawn chairs. And I was just wishing I was in those chairs. I told Josh, like, you just enjoy that 590 truck. And, well, we see how that went, but
I think back to Crossville 2019, when Derek was doing the 4-wheel drive burnouts with Blue Balls, and he was on his third trans, and I walked by his pit, and he was just standing there staring at the truck, a broken man. I mean, he was just frustrated and justifiably so. And it's like, what you're doing is cool, but is it that cool? At some point you just go, oh man, back this up.
Right. And I think, heads up classes are cool. I just don't know. Like, I wish there was some kind of a magic button that we could all somehow go heads up racing, and yet it not get carried away, and it all costs us a lot of money and a lot of work. I think that's one thing. I think there's still a handful of people out there that don't buy into the index racing and don't want to run the 590 class. But you look at that class the last 2 years, and it's consistently the biggest pro class we have. And it's because it's attainable, and it has that limit there for a reason, so that it can be affordable for more people. And it creates a lot of good competition and a lot of side-by-side racing. And a lot of people can do it. So I don't know. Is it educating people? Can we educate people enough to where their ego won't get in the way of getting them in situations where they're going to build a vehicle that they can't complete?
I don't know. I mean, part of that responsibility is actually mine, especially at the track. If the heads up classes, of course, are exciting, so that excitement's going to come through in my presentation. But I need to make it just as exciting for the index guys. And oftentimes, especially when we get to the eliminations, it really is. There's some races that are so razor close that, I mean, it's awesome. I have to bring that same enthusiasm for what those guys are doing, and they deserve it. They're working hard too. Right. The excitement of it needs to be communicated, and that's my job at the track.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely something to that. And I think that's where it comes to how many people in the stands do you think actually understand what's happening at an index race?
I don't think many really do. It's and bracket racing even more so. I try to, at every race, give a little of a primer about what you're going to see and why you're going to see it happen and what it means. Because the best fan we have is an educated one, because maybe one of them someday becomes a racer, gets the bug, gets interested and wants to do it. So trying to break that down and explain it is really important part of what I do. And the other reason I do it is, again, like I said, I didn't grow up around this stuff at all. So, and back when I was a kid, we didn't have these, your connection to the sport to find anything out was either first person, the announcer at the track, or a magazine or a newspaper, if it existed, that covered what you wanted to know about. So I realize there's that easier access for a new fan today, but their first point of contact at the event is me. And I want to teach them about what they're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. Like, takes me off on a little bit of a rabbit trail, but like, as far as drawing spectators to our sport, obviously the diesel racing, we've never had a giant crowd. And like, I've heard others say, whether it comes to like just racing promotion in general, like they almost feel like you need to make it a festival and the racing needs to be part of the festival. But man, that can be tough to do sometimes too. Like, I really enjoy the atmosphere at Scheid. I mean, there's vendors there. The sled pull track is right by the racetrack. And some of the things they've tried to do, like they tried the concert thing this year, which really, I think it's fair to say was a dud. But like, I don't know, how do we make it more interesting for people? How do we bring people in? Is it the fact that you have to be there all day and it gets long and boring and hot, or like, I mean, or do we
I
just
don't know. I mean, it's long, boring, and hot at an NHRA race sometimes too. So I don't think that's necessarily it. And I guess what I fear is, and tractor pulling actually has the exact same problem. There's the downtime issue. It's for farmers and hicks, not realizing engineering that's going into these things, and how do we get more people to be there without making the actual competition itself the sideshow to something else that you're putting on, if that makes sense. I guess what I don't want it to do is, I don't want to turn it into monster trucks where it started out as a competition and then it became a booked in show. Yeah, I don't want racing to necessarily go down that path, but I do recognize we're in the business of being entertainers for fans who are paying to come and see it. Yeah, you're right. Scheid, I have no problem with the vendor piece and the sled pull track. And if you're had your fill of watching drag racing for a couple hours and you want to go see something else, well, you can go over to sled pulls and it's you can walk over there. You're there in 3 minutes and you got something else you can go check out. Your event coupled with UCC, same kind of thing. There's stuff going on all over the property all day. So you can always find something to go do. Whereas at a pure race, there is a little bit more of a struggle for that. And I'll admit, I'm not a great promoter. That's not the hat that I wear. I don't really exist in that realm or understand it too well. And so most of my ideas probably aren't good ones, which is why none of them have ever been implemented.
Well, ultimately, I don't know. We learned, when we did our first race, when we held it here in Ohio, we had all these great big ideas. You know, we wanted a big night show and we wanted jet cars and we wanted this and that. And I mean, ultimately it comes down to it. You have to be able to make the numbers work to do it. And a lot of that stuff is expensive. I mean, I think we paid, I don't know, did we pay $15,000 to bring jet cars in to make, you know, 3 passes that weekend? That may be a little high, but you know, it's big chunks of money, and you can quickly get yourself wrapped up into a lot of overhead, and it really is kind of difficult to know how to tie it all together and how to make the best show and all that stuff. But anyhow, that's kind of a rabbit trail, I guess, from
there's things you can do, like, you know, so I'll use Rocky Top as an example, where it's a, in a sense, a pure race. There's not a secondary event tied to it. They're there for the drag race. Well, if we have those times where we got to go into track prep or whatever, well, Michael will bring in those stunt riders on the bikes, and so it keeps people engaged and they got something to watch for a few minutes while track prep's getting done. So there's options out there to find something like that. But I guess I'm the wrong person to ask about stuff like that, because I'm like the hardcore guy who's going to sit there all day anyway.
Right.
So I can't get my head into that space where I'm a casual fan. I'm not. So I don't know how to approach it.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. As much as it's not really my cup of tea, the show and shine thing really seems to draw large, you know, crowds of younger kids. I mean, I think I heard there was something like 400 entries at UCC.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane that you can draw a crowd doing that kind of thing. And I mean, it seems like a lot of the younger crowd, if you give them a place to party, it doesn't matter what else you do, they'll show up.
Yep. Yeah. I have no problem with that either. Like you said, it's not necessarily my scene either, but I get it. I understand the enthusiasm and the passion behind it. And got some of those builds, some of those things those guys do, just go, wow, you know, you really put some time into this.
Yeah. Time, money, you name it. It's crazy. So I definitely, I mean, there's times you walk through a show and shine pit or you walk through a sled pulling pit and you're like, man, can I get a handful of these people to just come race? Like, I mean, that budget would go a long ways in a race truck.
It sure would. Yeah.
Especially when you walk through the sled pulling pits and you see some of those outfits, you know, they're rolling 2 super stock tractors out of a 155-foot rig. That may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but probably not too much.
No, there are some 100-footers out there. Not a lot, but there's a few.
I just remember, I don't know, was it Saturday night sitting at Scheid and watching a couple of those things roll out, and I was like, that's got to be something to drive. I mean, there's not much of a turn. I don't know how they got them out of that place without. I mean, they were ditch to ditch and then some probably.
Yeah.
But some pretty cool outfits. So yeah, I mean, how much back to the whatever abandoned projects thing, how much do you think, so say like us or Derek Rose or somebody that has a shop behind them, and seeing shops like that being able to, you know, accomplish the things that we do and making it unattainable for, you know, the average person that wants to try to compete. I mean, I don't know, how do you, we've discussed that in Pro Street for a while, you know, when we were running like 5.0s and Dustin Jackson was running 5.0s, and it was kind of, everybody else was just there. And it seemed to really kind of stall the class for a while. And it's, I don't know, I would say it's rebounded some, but yet that, you know, our pro classes have never been big. And I don't know, I think some of it's just simply numbers and the size of our industry and how we're spread out. You know, I feel like there would be another half a dozen of shops on the west side of the the western half of the US that would have the ability to do it if it wasn't for the 20-30 hours of travel. And that's some of the thing that we fight as a smaller industry, whereas, you go to about any state in the US and you can get a handful of pro mods together for a race without having to travel more than 2 or 3 hours. So I don't know. I mean, some of that's just, I really feel like that's where sometimes we just need to kind of find our place to where we can race local with non-diesel stuff. But I don't know. I think that the Super Bowl thing is really good. Everybody can travel 20 hours once or twice a year. They can't do it 6 times a year.
Yeah.
So
You cover that really well, but I think in terms of like the for the new guy, so to speak, to just come in off the street and go to that level, I do see it happen on the pulling side. Somebody who's wealthy enough to do so will go right to the top, and most of the time, that's fine. On the drag racing side, I don't think it should necessarily be that easy. I've been around it quite a bit, but I have no business getting in Tyler Burkhart's truck and trying to take it down the track. No way. I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't raced to have the instinct behind the wheel control one of those things. So I don't think it should necessarily be that easy to just get in one. You're going to have some skill to be able to control it, for one thing. And I think you do learn that. And that's where the index classes become not only a place to keep people, engaged without the budget, but it's a place to hone skills too. That's just as important. You're learning things going slower that will translate by the time you're ready to go faster. And the impatience that sometimes I think infects anybody who's engaged in a passion pursuit like this is, they want to go pro mod right now. And I'm telling you, you're not ready unless you've got that experience on the spark plug side already somehow. Yeah, there is the budget, and that's a thing, but there's a skill set too that I think should be developed just for your own safety and the safety of the other guy. You have responsibility to that guy in the other lane too. If you're wild and out of control, you can hurt him, and that's not right either.
Yeah. No, it's just definitely a thing. I've asked myself many a times. I mean, the sled pulling and drag racing, like, why can't we get some of those sled puller guys to cross over to drag racing? I saw it in NHRA Pro Mod this year. Can't remember the guy's name, but
Stan Shelton.
Yeah, Stan Shelton. Yep. He crossed over. Like, do most of these farmers, like, are they're content driving their tractor and feeling that horsepower and don't necessarily have the need for speed, or why don't we see more of those farmers? Is it the whole, like, being able to stay close to home? Like, what is it that keeps a sled puller sled pulling?
Yeah, there's a big piece of that. I mean, and you're in the same sort of, part of the country that I am. You can have a top flight machine and run extremely hard, extremely competitively against a bunch of other really good iron and not have to drive more than about 6 hours at all during the summer if you don't want to. The geography piece of it is, I think, the biggest single contributing factor to why guys aren't going to cross over out of the tractor pulling world, is because they can get their horsepower fixed, as you said, and they don't have to drive 10, 12, 15 hours to do it. That's the biggest thing, is the geography. And I haven't found a way to stretch or shorten highways yet. So I don't know what, there's no fix for that part of it. And I think there's some people like myself too, who already have grown up around pulling. I'd have no problem climbing in the seat of a pro stock or an unlimited mod, feeling like I could control it, but I could not get in Ben Shaddy's car and get it down the track. No way. I don't know what I'm doing. So there's, and I know I know myself well enough to know now I'm in my 40s. I know I don't have the hand-eye coordination. I'm not quick enough. And so I'm not going to put myself in that spot for that kind of a risk. But over on the sled side at 35 miles an hour, okay.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it.
Right. When something goes super wrong on the sled pulling track, most likely you'll end up in a bucking truck, like happened this past weekend, where I mean, that looked
Randy
brutal.
got beat up.
That looked brutal. Like, that's probably about as brutal as you're going to see it on the track. but yet, you know, typically that's about as bad as you're going to see it. You're never going over 35 mile an hour, and not near as much stuff can
Yeah.
happen, but there's still plenty of things. I think it was 1 or 2 years ago when there was that super stock, or not super, um, forgive my sled pulling horribleness, but one of the tractors um, was got into a pretty bad bounce, and the front tire came off and went into the crowd. Like, you see some of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But
As long as the hitch doesn't break, I mean, if the hitch doesn't break, really the biggest concern is probably number one's fire
mm,
for
yeah,
that sport. That's the big one.
man, fire is scary. Yeah, I've seen a couple of. I mean, drag racing is really bad because
Yeah.
you catch fire going 150 mile an hour, 200 mile an hour. I mean, you're in there until you get it stopped. It's just, and
Yeah.
you've got all that wind fanning the flames. I don't know, watching Chris Cadato's truck had that fire over the, I think it was just this last weekend. You know, that was, which he got out of that plenty fine, but still, you know, seeing a ride like that go up in flame, it can happen so fast. It just takes, you know, one fuel line or one oil line to come loose, and can happen to almost anyone.
Yeah. And I mean, it's even that's scary too. You know, oil line comes off in a drag car. Now it's under the
Yeah,
tires.
right.
So now you're on fire and out of control.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a scary, scary deal. Sled pulling side, if you have the same thing happen, well, you're stopping in 20 feet and there'll be somebody with an extinguisher there to meet you, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep. Oh man. Um, yeah. So much fun stuff, and yet so many things that can go wrong so quickly.
But
Um,
isn't that a big piece of why we do it though? Isn't there's that thrill part
right.
that you know what, this could have a consequence. And I think that's, you know, back to what gets people into this or keeps them into it is I think you need that taste of the adrenaline and the butterflies in the stomach, because once you get it, man, you never lose that feeling. It's a charge, it's a rush, and I think that's a big thing that keeps people coming back. And I think when a guy retires and moves on, it's simply because he doesn't feel that way anymore.
Mhm.
You know, doesn't do it for him.
Right. Yeah, no, there's definitely, I mean, you talk to top fuel guys that have done it. Clay Milliken specifically, I've heard him say it a couple of times. You know, he's like, if this isn't fun anymore, I'm going to quit doing it. If I don't get an
Yeah.
adrenaline rush when I do it, I'm going to quit. And I think it'd be hard to not get an adrenaline rush in a top fuel car. I mean, I was listening to Wes Buck this last week, and he got to sit in a top fuel car to do a warm up at Indy, and he was describing how, like, it's the most violent thing he's ever felt, and that was just sitting in a car idling.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. I'd never, my schedule never worked out to go see nitro cars until this summer. I went to Norwalk,
Really?
spent the
Okay.
weekend there,
Yeah.
and had Champions Club access. So basically, you're right there on the starting
Yeah.
line without being on the track, and that was an eye opener.
Oh my goodness.
It was everything I'd been told to expect, except for one thing that no one's ever told me, and I wasn't ready for, is it literally will blur your vision for the first second and a half.
Yep.
That was an odd feeling.
Yeah. It affects every part of your body. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just noise. It's, I don't know what to call it.
You don't need a chiropractor. Go to a nitro race. You'll get straightened right out.
Oh man, I can't wait to get back to one. I've been to a couple different ones. Took the family and did U.S. Nationals the year before COVID, and that was a lot of fun. Camped out and, you know, experienced the whole weekend, and it's definitely, man, if you've got any kind of racing in your blood, even if you don't and you enjoy anything with a motor on it, gotta go see nitro. Like, it's a game.
Once.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
I don't know. In my opinion, it's hard to do it just once. Like, man, I'd do it really often if I could, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an annual thing. It'll be hard to miss that.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the pit side of stuff just about as much. I mean, the way that they can rebuild engines, and I mean, I don't remember who it was, but I want to say J.R. Todd. We timed them. They rolled the car back in under the canopy, and from the time that they rolled under the canopy to the time that they were putting pistons in a rack was 6 minutes. I mean, just absolutely insane that they can tear an engine down that fast,
Yeah,
and
it's
do it like
crazy.
clockwork, and consistently make them work right.
I've
Yeah.
got a friend who's a fabricator at Kalitta's, and Sunday morning before the racing started, he let me come in the pit with Sean Langdon's car and
Okay.
was showing me stuff on it, and just kind of a little behind the scenes on the car and that. And it's it's the most blunt force
Yeah.
way of going about it. There is, I don't want to say there's no finesse, because if you watch any of Clay's videos specifically where they're talking about the tuning and the minute adjustments they're making on the car, there's definitely finesse to it. But I mean, it's just a sledgehammer of an animal of a way of going
Right.
racing.
Yeah. No, it really is. I mean, you look at I shouldn't say lack of technology, but yet, I mean, those engines electronically are very simple. I mean,
Oh yeah,
granted, they have tons of data collection on them, but I mean,
yeah. It's a magneto. I mean, there's
right.
1930s farm tractors had those.
Yep. They're very basic. Yeah, I had a pretty unique experience when we were at the U.S. Nationals. Ran into a guy in the pits. We were standing at the Terry McMillan. I think it was the last year he was racing the Amelie motor oil car, and we were standing there at the fence. And he comes over to me. He's like, "Man," he recognized me from our YouTube videos, and he's like, "My son's like a huge fan." Well, it turns out I don't know what he was, but he had some connection to the McMillan crew, and he got us inside the ropes, and we got to see the trailer, and the boys got pistons, and
Nice.
yeah, we got the whole inside tour, so that was pretty neat. But it really is cool to see what goes into those cars, and yeah, there's a lot to be learned. I mean, I guess not really on the mechanical side, but I've just been listening to a lot of these guys recently. The guys that are racing at that level are the guys that know how to market themselves. Like they have to, I mean, in essence, they're all funding themselves by
Yes.
finding marketing partners to work with. And I want to learn from them. I know we're not necessarily going to do it on the level that they are, but there's definitely, yeah, lots of stuff we can learn in how to put ourselves out there and how to be of a value to a company. And yeah, I don't know.
That's a great point, because if you think a lot of the people doing what we do, they're shop owners.
Mhm.
And so, okay, maybe a sponsorship doesn't mean cash. Maybe it means a new hoist for your shop, and you put the company that sold it to you on the truck for the year.
Yeah.
There's ways to do that and make it pay where, okay, maybe you're not getting that check to cash, but you do have another benefit to you, but you in turn also have to be willing to do the work for them. It means you're going to maybe have to take the truck to their place of business one Saturday and show it off, and do a show and tell with their, and we see the nitro teams all doing that sort of thing. So if the money piece is a concern for those in this sport, and let's face it is for everybody, there's one way to offset even some of that, and subsidize it in some meaningful way where you still get to do it now. If it might mean the difference between you being out this year and you not.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's some of those relationships are pretty unique. Like you look at Josh Hart and R&L carriers, like from my understanding, R&Ls, I mean, yes, they're in there to advertise themselves as a freight company, but their main objective with that relationship is to use it as a recruiting tool and as a reward for their drivers, where they're creating, hospitality suites and that kind of stuff for their drivers as a reward for, incentives and stuff.
And that's true.
So they're using it more as an employee benefit than they are as advertising. So,
That's
that's
true.
really unique for someone to be able to pitch that or to come up with that kind of an idea. But yeah.
And the employees at R&L reacted to that, I know, because we had a rain delay right before the finals for the pro classes at Norwalk. Well, across the street from the track is an R&L depot. It's right there. And so once the rain was done, I went to the pit side grandstand as far down as you could get. Basically, you're at the 8th mile. And in that last section, nothing but R&L people. And Hart had made the final. And unfortunately, he lost, so they were bummed. But they were there having a good time. They were enjoying
Right.
themselves, and that was cool.
Yeah, no, that's pretty neat. So you said you were down there. You were down there to watch some racing from the big end.
I did. I did. I spent a lot of time at the 8th mile because that's the last grandstand, other than what they call the creature bleachers,
Yeah,
which is
right.
past the finish line. And I did go down there too during top
Yep.
alcohol. That's pretty cool.
That's a whole different experience. I mean, it's literally almost scary sitting in those stands when those top fuel cars come at you, because like they're like coming at you before you even hear them almost. And
Definitely. That is definitely the case. Yeah. even at the 8th mile, the delay and the sound versus what you're seeing. And I dragged my camera and I shot a million pictures because that's another hobby and way for me to promote too. And when you're used to shooting a lot of pulling where guys are going 30 miles an hour and all of a sudden a guy is within your frame exposure gaining from 220 to 270 that quick, it's you learn real quick what you need to change.
Oh man, yeah. This is turning into the NHRA Top Fuel Promotion podcast. But no, I like it. No, it's good
but there's
stuff.
a thing there too, though. I mean, so obviously we you can see that we're excited talking about it, and some of the things that we're mentioning do translate back to our world. Educating the fans about what's going on, getting them in your pit area, showing them your car or truck and what you're doing and why, and being a friendly, personable person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we say it in the drivers' meetings too. Is like if you're racing, you've got something good to work on. It's okay to tell somebody, hey, no, not right now. Come back later. I gotta handle this.
Right.
But then when they do come back, spend 5 minutes and you will be surprised how much of a better fan you will have for that 5 minutes of your time.
Right. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Educating people and helping, letting them feel like they're a part of it and getting kids in your vehicles. And I mean, showing people and just even telling them a little bit what goes into it. I mean, people really have no idea how many things that you have to be right for these things to work at the level that they do sometimes. So I had a couple of really enjoyable conversations at Scheid, just with fans that they were there to race, but they were just filling them in and answering questions and taking an interest in what they're doing as well, and making sure that they feel like it's worth their time being there. Ran into a guy and his friend that run a shop in Kansas City, and they had brought their dad and one of their other friends along, and they were there for the weekend, and they were just glad to be there. And we need to make sure that we cultivate those relationships and help those guys. And if somebody is down on their luck, I think of one in specific. There was a truck that broke at Scheid, and your typical reaction might be, well, you should have been more prepared. You should have done this or you should have done that. But when you step back a little bit, you're like, this guy's new. He doesn't know any better. Help him. Like, show some interest. Help him. And that might be the difference between that guy turning around and selling that truck or giving it another shot and then realizing how much fun it is when it doesn't break the next weekend he takes it out. So I think we need to always be conscious of how I guess we react to different people around us. I know for me, like, I realize I'm used to a lot of really nice tools that we use to go racing, whether it's standalone ECU where everything's all together, and some of that kind of stuff. And I kind of wrinkle my nose when somebody is putting a race truck together and they don't have that, because it's harder. But I have to remember that they have to stay within their means, and I need to help them the best way that I can to, have fun. So, I think, the way, we make ourselves available to people and helping educate people goes a long way. I don't know. It's really hard to help people not get in over their heads, because we say it all the time. The last 10% is 90% of the work. And people don't understand what they're getting into all the time. So my biggest advice to people would be, make sure you stay within your means. Don't start a project that you're not sure if you can finish. I mean, I look back at our early days of racing, and I take Brandon Miller. He does all of our Firepunk engineering work now. Does the anteater and all that stuff. A lot of our wiring harness and stuff like that. But he had a couple different trucks, kind of, back in the earlier racing days, 2008 to 2015 or whatever, and that he had an S10 specifically that he bought a truck that I think it had like a small tire on it, and he couldn't get traction, had a 12 valve in it. Like it was a constant, you were always working on it, you were always building it, and you were almost never racing it. And I keep looking back at that, and having been in that situation firsthand, if he wouldn't have been the kind of guy, like, I'm still fairly convinced, and I think he'd probably tell you, he enjoyed the building as much or more as he did the actual racing. We're not all built that way. Most people are building it out of necessity so that they can go fast. But I realize how limiting, time and money can be. We face it in the business world. It's on a little bit of a different level than what, somebody as a one-man show would face. Definitely takes a lot of dedication when you're a one-man show. So, don't bite off too big of a chunk, I guess. Probably the biggest chunk of advice I could give people, and live, be happy and have fun. I mean, talking with Travis Trent at Scheid, like, his truck, he had a good weekend there. His truck was running 590. His truck weighs like next to nothing. And all of his buddies are like, let's go Pro Street. Let's go Pro Street. And I'm like, Travis, like, you enjoy sitting around your fire and, having drinks with your friends and all that stuff? Or do you want to race and wrench on trucks all weekend? Like, I'm not saying you can't, but if fun for you, like if you have the drive that Austin Denny has, and you have a lot of fun working on your truck, and you're not scared of work and all that stuff, you might be the guy for Pro Street, but make sure you don't burn yourself out. And
that'd be the worst thing. I'd hate to see anybody get to that point where they're just tired and frustrated,
Right. I mean, Paul Cato's another one. Like, he, had a good 590 truck, pushed to Pro Street and had some success there, but really, like, wants that next step. And I think he got to the point where just, he still has the race truck and he still races, but the what do they say? The squeeze isn't worth the juice, or
the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Yeah.
So I get it. There is a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of money that goes into it. So, everybody's situation's a little bit different, and I'm not going to look down on them if it doesn't work, because it is what it is. But
no, there's a frequent refrain. Guys over the years, many have heard me say this to them in a pit area, and say, hey, if they had a bad day or whatever, and they'll be discouraged, I'll come by their pit and just you check in, find out what happened, and I'll remind them as I'm walking away. I say, hey, just remember, you had more fun today than I did, and they'll always say why. I said, because you put a helmet on and I didn't. Remember, you get to do this.
Right.
So you do have to sometimes separate yourself and just remember you get to do something that's really cool.
Right. Yeah. And that's something, I mean, I heard it from Clay Millican, listened to the podcast the other day. He's like, at the end of the day, I don't, how did he say it? He's like, I never wake up having nightmares about having to go racing. However, I do wake up having nightmares about having to go, what was it? He said, stocking boxes at Kroger or something, whatever he did for 11 years before he went racing. So our most frustrating days racing, we're still racing. And at the end of the day, you can put your race truck in your trailer and you can go hang out with your friends if you want. If you're willing to just sit back and enjoy it rather than sometimes trying to maybe let your ego get in the way of having a good time.
Yeah. That's one way where, again, like I made the comment earlier, sometimes social media can be evil because it becomes keeping up with the Joneses, and you're blasted every day with this. I call it success porn. Nobody cares, work harder, do more. Well, there is a limit to that. There is. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Like, I feel like sometimes we're guilty of that. Like I look at, we hear it all the time about the quad cab. I want a truck like the quad cab. It makes 1,250 horsepower and it tows and it goes to the drag races and it's a do-it-all truck. So, let's do it. Okay, we can do it, but you have to understand, like, it comes at a price. It's not as easy as it might seem. I don't know. I think sometimes when we make these Swiss Army knives and it gets, obviously we're going to promote it because it's cool. And don't get me wrong, it's cool. The quad cab can do all those things, but you're going to tear stuff up eventually. And it just, people don't understand. I think the other thing that you see people do a lot is they spend every last dime that they have in the build, and then they have nothing to maintain it.
That's a big one. That's a real big one.
So that gets really tough. I've got this money, but I'm not going to spend it so that I can, fix it when it breaks. So nobody ever thinks like that.
It's been said many times, and it's a maximum around motorsports, and it's true. You can't afford to race it until you can afford to build it twice.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is.
Right. Little bit. Yeah. Something I just thought about that we talked about the other day, that we see being an issue quite a bit is people are doing things on a budget. So they're looking for a deal. And sometimes that deal they might think is a used part, or there might be a business out there that's trying to promote themselves. So, hey, I'll build you this engine. It's this and this. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. There's no need for you to spend, good money on an engine from Fleece or D&J or Wagler, whatever. That's expensive. But we can do it like this, and I'll help you out and I'll whatever. And then they get the build done and they figure out that it's not what they thought it was. They didn't know any better. I've seen more than one person being chased away from the sport by, I guess just being misguided in the parts that they bought. So that's really tough. And I think, that's part of my goal in doing these and some of the videos that we do is just, man, as much as we can educate people on do's and don'ts and smart things to do and how to spend their money once rather than spending it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I see that too. I did work in the industry for a while. I worked for Tony for a couple of years, and on the sales side, you could always usually tell when a call would come in how serious someone was about what they were trying to do. They'd call for an engine build by us, and it's like, okay, within about 3 minutes, okay, we've identified we want to make 1,000 horsepower, and we need to make it live for 50,000 miles minimum. And oh, by the way, my budget's only 10 grand. Yeah. Well, we're sorry. No offense, we are not the people for you.
Right. Yeah.
It's just, I'm not going to put it to, we can give you an engine for 10 grand that you can make 1,000 horsepower with once.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
So it's just like, you got to be realistic about, and again, the stuff that gets thrown around sometimes and online and in chat boards and whatever, you just kind of scratch your head and go, no, it doesn't quite work that way, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the education piece really having to come through from the actual experts in the industry.
And that's where it gets frustrating. I mean, you have somebody that's a flash in the pan and has some success, once or twice or whatever, and then they go blabbing on the internet. Oh, well, I did this and I don't have a sleeve motor, so you don't need a sleeve motor. It'll be just fine. Well, in reality, when you sit back and look at it, like they're putting on 10 or 20 passes a year. So yeah, it lasted a year or two. When you're putting on 50 or 60, and no, that's not going to last, that long. So, yeah, you just have to be kind of careful, and it makes it really hard. There's so many different opinions out there. Somebody that doesn't know better, it makes it really hard for them to decipher who to listen to and what's good advice. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Ultimately, like, I just want people. We were at a management meeting the other day and just talking about business stuff, and pretty much I was told I need to quit. What was it? I need to quit being the consumer. And I think they had good intentions with that, but that made me realize like how much I try to think as the customer. Like when I had a truck, I didn't have a lot of extra money to spend on that truck. So I make it we here at Firepunk as a whole make it our very mission to try to make sure that we don't sell you something you don't need. We try to offer you the best value that we can. Are we always perfect at it? No. But there's reasons that we have our opinions. I'm not going to tell you that you need a sleeved engine just because it's fun and I like to spend your money. Like, no.
Right.
We have reasons for that. We've torn them up. And can you do without a sleeved engine? Probably, but maybe you can't. Maybe you should have spent that extra $6,000 instead of having to spend the $12,000, again next year. So I don't know.
it's well, we're back to the ego thing, right? With the person on the other end of the phone, they're it's passion, which doesn't help either. We're not selling them a coffee maker. No one gets excited about that. It's their truck. It's their pride and joy. So they're amped up about it, and they have this idea in their head that they think is right. And sometimes it's not that you're trying to put them in check or whatever, but you have to be like, look, we've been doing this for years, and there's reasons for why we do what we do.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong or make you feel small or whatever. I'm trying to educate you that we want to build your engine in this way because we know it will work, and we can stand behind it rather than sell you something that we can't.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's always, you can tell pretty quickly the kind of person that's on the other end of the line. Like you get some of the people that it's fun to help them because they're just gobbling up everything that you're telling them, and you know that they want to learn. And then you have the other guy that already has his mind made up, and he seems like he's calling just to argue with you almost sometimes. And
you do get both sides. To be fair, there is both sides. There is the people that do listen to you, and it's refreshing to talk to them. You'll wind up sometimes you almost, it's bad to say it, but like you don't want them to call because there goes the next hour. We're going to be on the phone. Right.
And that's so tough to do. I mean, we used to, back in the day, like I would look forward to those calls, and I still enjoy that kind of a call. But man, when you're tied down on the phone for an hour and it's not necessarily leading to a sale, that gets a little bit tough from a business standpoint as well.
Right.
But you also know that if you turn that person away, they're going to be calling the next shop, and they might be buying parts from them because you didn't want to spend the time with them. So
they might be that guy who you talk to him, you spend, you might do it 6 times, over the course of 6 months, but then that's the guy that's going to come back and buy that $30,000 engine because now he feels comfortable with what he's buying.
Right. Yeah. And man, I know we're far from perfect on the phones, and it's a constant, battle to get phone calls answered. And some of those long phone calls are the very reason that it's hard to catch them all.
Yep.
So I don't know. Business is interesting, but I do think we're definitely blessed to be able to, take our hobby and turn it into a business. And, it's very unique from the standpoint that it's our hobby and it's our business and it's our friend circle. And it's a lot of things tied up into one, and can make things a little bit extra difficult sometimes, but definitely unique. Not many people that can, enjoy their hobby every day when they go to work. So.
Right. Exactly.
Well, cool. It's been good chatting with you, and I don't want to keep you all night, but I appreciate you coming on with us.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for having me.
It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah. It's good. Always good talking to you. And
Yeah.
I know we'll see you next week.
Yep. You might see me next week. I'm not sure.
Oh.
I might take this one off. So
Wouldn't blame you.
Yeah.
You've earned it. You've earned it.
Yeah. But you'll definitely see some of the Firepunk crew down there, and I know once it comes down to it, I'm gonna kind of wish I'm going if I don't go. But
That's usually
also,
what happens.
yeah, it's also a busy enough time of the year. I think I'll enjoy being at home for a weekend again. So. All right. Well, very good. We will catch you later, and thanks again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.